Good morning, everyone. My name is David Dembski, and I am the Research and Development Director at NEXLER. Today, I would like to briefly discuss a new technology employed in the NEXLER product line, NEXLER NOx Cut membranes featuring air purification technology. Why is air purification so important, and what exactly in our air raises so much concern and poses serious health risks? The majority of pollutants is generated by human activity, primarily through the combustion of solid and liquid fuels to produce energy or for industrial purposes. These pollutants are listed in order of their emissions, with the highest quantities at the top. Farther down the list, their amounts may be smaller. Yet some still have a substantial impact on human health. I would like to concentrate in particular on nitrogen oxides, referred to as NOx, which are among the most hazardous gases produced by various industrial and combustion processes. Nitric oxide itself is a colorless gas formed at high temperatures during fuel combustion, and on its own it is not especially dangerous. However, it leads to the formation of nitrogen dioxide, NO2, through oxidation. Nitrogen dioxide is highly toxic and has a significant negative effect on human health. That is why it's so important to monitor nitrogen dioxide levels, and even more crucial, to find ways of reducing its emissions or removing it from the atmosphere if reducing emissions proves impossible. The negative impact of nitrogen dioxide on health is both wide-ranging and severe. It can affect virtually every organ in the body, depending on whether exposure is external or if the gas is inhaled and enters the bloodstream. When it comes to specific organs, NO2 can trigger many conditions, from mild to more serious irritations, as well as diseases that develop over time from repeated exposure, such as asthma or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. It also contributes to endothelial dysfunction, affecting the vascular system and increasing the risk of heart attacks or strokes. Additionally, it is linked to diabetes and various other diseases, as well as cognitive and concentration disorders, including memory impairments, particularly in children. According to estimates, air pollution is responsible for 400,000 premature deaths in the European Union. Many of these could be prevented, at least in part, by minimizing exposure to a harmful agent like nitrogen dioxide. Where do nitrogen oxides come from? Unfortunately, the sources are numerous, but the main ones include road transport, which in the European Union accounts for around 37% of nitrogen dioxide emissions, followed by energy production that relies on fossil fuels, solid, liquid, or gaseous. In the automotive sector, NOx is principally generated by internal combustion engines burning fuel. The automotive industry has long recognized this issue, equipping vehicles with catalytic converters to reduce NOx emissions. And these catalysts help remove NOx, transforming it into less harmful forms of nitrogen by means of an additional oxidation process that occurs on heated surfaces of noble metals like platinum or palladium. This challenge has also been addressed through regulations such as Euro emission standards. However, note that while Euro 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 successively tightened limits on NOx emissions since 2014 and the introduction of Euro 6 a decade ago, these limits haven't changed. The reason is the technical limitations of vehicles. The current systems work up to a certain efficiency, and further NOx reductions simply are not feasible with existing solutions. Car manufacturers do not have a ready method to eliminate NOx emissions entirely, so we must look for other ways to address the problem. One might think electric vehicles solve this, and in a sense they do, since there's no direct fuel combustion in an electric motor. However, the electricity needed to power those cars must still be generated somewhere. In many countries, including Poland, it is largely produced by burning fossil fuels, which shifts emissions from city centers to large centralized power plants. It remains uncertain whether the upcoming Euro 7 standard, expected around 2030, will bring significant changes. Given the lack of new technical breakthroughs, it's likely the current emission limit will just remain in place. Transport emissions are a serious issue in Poland, where the average car is over 15 years old. Annually, about 475,000 new cars are registered, yet only a small fraction contribute to emission reduction in cities. Meanwhile, around 27 million passenger cars remain in use. Almost 80% of these vehicles are over 11 years old, which means they still abide by older, more lenient emission standards. This situation won't improve rapidly. At present, the annual maximum NOx level permitted by the EU is 40 micrograms per cubic meter. Nonetheless, many cities regularly exceed this threshold at various points in the year. Some cities, like Katowice or Poznań, don't consistently surpass 40 micrograms per cubic meter, but keep in mind that this legal limit is based on early 2000s World Health Organization guidelines. In 2021, the WHO revised its recommendations for NOx levels, lowering them to 10 micrograms per cubic meter because of growing evidence of NO2's harmful health effects. By that more stringent standard, practically every major city in Poland regularly exceeds the limit. Another significant source of NOx is fuel combustion for heating. The table mentioned in the presentation compares the amount of NOx emitted when heating a reference home with an area of 150 square meters, featuring a relatively good energy standard, about 90 kilowatt hours per square meter per year. Regardless of whether you burn hard coal, which we already associate with high emissions, heating oil or natural gas, there's no completely clean fuel that completely avoids NOx pollution. Electricity, again, emerges as an alternative, but just as with electric cars, the electricity must come from somewhere. In Poland's case, often from fossil fuel power stations. This effectively relocates the emission source from populated areas to power plants in more remote locations. When you look at pollution data over the course of a year, visible in this animation, it's clear that in Poland, NOx pollution is partly seasonal, particularly pronounced in autumn and winter when homes are heated, usually using fossil fuels. In large urban centers, it's a constant issue year-round. Now, to touch briefly on legal regulations, as mentioned, we have the annual limit of 40 micrograms per cubic meter, but the EU directive that introduced this threshold is expected to be revised in line with the latest WHO recommendations of 10 micrograms per cubic meter. Another important piece of legislation is the directive on the reduction of national emissions. It outlines strategies for EU member states and is reflected in national law concerning the trading of emission allowances. While these regulations set targets, they don't necessarily provide concrete paths for achieving them. In the context of legal regulations and upcoming requirements, there is also the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive concerning corporate sustainability. This directive comes into effect in 2025 for large enterprises and even sooner for public institutions. And starting in 2026, it will also apply to small and medium-sized enterprises under certain conditions. It mandates annual reporting on all non-business activities related to sustainable development. Companies will thus be obligated to produce a yearly report outlining all actions undertaken to minimize certain social disparities, as well as detailing the impact of their operations and steps they have taken to protect the environment and reduce emissions. Clearly, this will be a pressing issue, since such initiatives must be officially communicated. Furthermore, these cannot be merely empty declarations. The directive itself stipulates that every measure must be backed by scientific evidence, meaning one cannot simply claim to be doing good for the world if such efforts are either not actually happening or remain questionable. Clear and verifiable confirmation will be required. Therefore, at NEXLER, being a manufacturer of roofing membranes, we see tremendous potential in the innovative photocatalytic solution I would like to introduce. The construction sector and roofing membranes in particular holds substantial promise for protecting us against nitrogen oxides. First and foremost, the scale of building activity is significant. Every year, approximately 40 million square meters of flat roofs are covered with membranes, which constitutes a sizable area that can be leveraged. These membranes serve as the topmost layer and thus remain in direct contact with the atmosphere. Moreover, they are located right at the sources of emissions, specifically the chimneys on roofs where solid or liquid fuels are burned. They are also well exposed to sunlight, enabling the harnessing of solar energy for this purpose. We are therefore introducing photocatalytic versions of our top premium membranes, which feature a special coating that reduces nitrogen oxides. These selected premium membranes use high-quality polymer-modified bitumen and robust polyester reinforcements. One example, Top S42SP, is self-adhesive and can be installed without an open flame. And it's available at DIY retail chains. How does this technology work? As mentioned, the membrane is covered with a third-generation titanium-based photocatalytic nanocoating. When NOx gases come into contact with this coating, a series of chemical reactions transform them into harmless nitrates, thus removing NOx from the air. The mechanism is activated by light, which stimulates reactive oxygen species on the photocatalyst surface. While nitrogen oxides are our main concern due to their toxicity, the coating also helps neutralize other pollutants like sulfur oxides and VOCs. Moreover, this coating exhibits self-cleaning properties. To confirm that this isn't just theoretical, we conducted tests at an independent laboratory to measure NOx reduction. There is an international standard, ISO 2197, which defines the measurement method and classifies effectiveness in reducing NOx. Our results placed us in the highest activity class according to this standard, indicating that the membranes indeed remove nitrogen oxides very effectively. Looking at the environmental potential, if every top layer bituminous felts installed each year, those 40 million square meters had this photocatalytic coating, the resulting annual NOx reduction would be equivalent to the emissions of 400,000 passenger cars, which is nearly the total number of cars registered each year in Poland, about 475,000. On a smaller scale, 100 square meters of this membrane could offset the NOx emissions of one average passenger car. Finally, I'd like to highlight a few other environmentally friendly measures we are undertaking. We acknowledge that the world and climate are changing, and we understand that regulations will soon become even more rigorous. Carbon footprint is becoming a key factor in evaluating building materials. As of next year, new rules for introducing construction products to the market will require all manufacturers to assess and disclose how their products impact the environment. This year, in collaboration with the Building Research Institute, we developed a Type 3 environmental declaration. This declaration assesses the environmental impact of roofing membranes, illustrating, among other factors, the resource consumption required to produce 1 square meter of the solution, as well as other key environmental indicators, Such declarations are standard practice in many European countries. It's not yet common in Poland, but as I said, the upcoming regulations will bring many changes and will make such calculations, certificates, and declarations mandatory. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope I have managed to clarify a few topics related to NOx emissions and their reduction using our products.